It's that time of year again, and like many, I couldn't wait to put up my Christmas lights. There's something about the holidays an extra spark in the air, you know? The days get shorter, the weather gets colder, and suddenly the world around you feels warmer. I've always loved going all out with the decorations. Every year, I try to outdo myself: more lights, more colors, maybe even a few new inflatables. My neighbors, they know I take my holiday display seriously. It's my way of celebrating, of spreading a little bit of joy during the season. But this year was different. I had something extra in mind: a bigger display, brighter lights, and a bit of a wow factor. I knew it would be special. You know, the kind of Christmas light show that gets people talking, hopefully in a good way. Maybe, just maybe, it would even catch the attention of the local news or make some of my neighbors smile a little wider as they passed by. Everything was perfect. The lights went up without a hitch, and I couldn't wait to turn them on for the first time. It felt like magic the way they lit up my home and reflected in the frosty air, casting colors onto the snow. I just stood there, soaking it all in. It was just the beginning of what I thought would be a beautiful holiday tradition. But then, that's when things took a turn I didn't expect. Because right when everything seemed perfect, the unexpected happened. Everything was about to change. A simple act of holiday cheer would soon be challenged by someone who didn't quite see it that way. Someone who would take it too far. Someone who would escalate the situation. And that, my friends, is where this story really begins. You know, there's always that one neighbor, the one who seems to have a little too much time on their hands, the one who's always making sure everyone is following the rules to the letter. Well, this year, that neighbor was none other than Karen from the Homeowners Association, or, as I like to call her, the HOA Karen. I didn't know her that well, honestly. Just another face at the occasional neighborhood meeting where she always had something to say. But I did know one thing for sure: she wasn't exactly the fun type. No, Karen was the kind of person who lived by the rules that, frankly, I don't think even most of us knew existed. So one day, I was outside, finishing up some last-minute adjustments to the lights when I saw her walking towards me. She had this stern look on her face, like she was on a mission. At first, I thought maybe she was just admiring the lights. Maybe even thinking, wow, this place looks amazing. But nope, she didn't stop to compliment the effort. She didn't even acknowledge the colorful display of holiday cheer. Instead, she marched right up to me, arms crossed, her face as serious as a tax audit. "Excuse me," she said, "I'm not sure if you're aware, but the HOA guidelines specifically state that excessive lighting and displays could be seen as a disturbance." My heart sank. I couldn't believe it. I mean, I knew there were some HOA rules, but I had never imagined that something as harmless as Christmas lights could be considered a violation. Was I really being too festive? She went on, listing out regulations that I didn't even know existed, like some secret HOA codebook I had never signed up for. She wasn't even trying to be friendly about it. She was just, "Well, Karen." I tried to stay calm, but the more she talked, the more I could feel my holiday spirit slipping away. I told her that I'd checked everything, that I'd made sure to follow all the rules. But, of course, she wasn't having any of it. No, she had made up her mind. Before I knew it, she was already dialing her phone. I could see it, the dreaded phone call. Her hand was shaking a little as she pressed the numbers. And with a cold smile, she muttered, "I'm calling the police. This needs to be handled." And just like that, the situation went from uncomfortable to completely absurd. Police? For Christmas lights? I couldn't even wrap my head around it, but sure enough, it was happening, and I was about to get a real taste of what it's like when Karen meets the holiday season. I stood there speechless, watching her dial the number. I was stunned, honestly. I mean, I've dealt with neighborhood complaints before someone didn't like my garden gnomes. Another neighbor thought my hedges were too tall, but this was next level. She muttered something into her phone, a few words that didn't even make sense to me. Excessive holiday display, public disturbance, unpermitted lights. What was she even talking about? I could barely hear her voice through the phone, but I could tell it wasn't a friendly conversation. She wasn't asking for help, she was demanding action. The words police and violation floated through the air like daggers, and I realized This was actually happening. She wasn't just upset, she was going to make me the problem. And sure enough, seconds later, she ended the call. She looked at me with that smug, self-satisfied grin, like she had just made some huge power move. "The police will be here shortly," she said. "We'll see if they agree with you." For a moment, I just stood there, dumbfounded. Was this really happening? Was I seriously being dragged into a police matter because of my Christmas lights? And then a rush of confusion hit me. What would the police even do? What were they going to say? Were they going to show up, look at my lights, and be like, "Yup, that's a crime"? I wasn't sure what to expect. The whole thing felt like an overreaction, but I wasn't about to back down without at least hearing from the authorities. After all, I knew my display was harmless. There was no way I was breaking any laws, right? But it didn't matter what I thought. The call had been made, and now I was about to have an awkward run-in with the police over something that should have been nothing more than a cheerful display of holiday spirit. I had no idea what was about to happen, but I could already feel the dread creeping in. The fun of putting up the lights? Gone. The excitement? Fading fast. The only thing I could do now was wait. I couldn't help but wonder, though, was this just the beginning? Would this fight really end with the police, or was Karen about to take things to a whole new level? As I waited for the police to arrive, I couldn't help but feel like I was trapped in some bizarre holiday nightmare. I mean, how did things get this out of hand? All I wanted to do was bring some Christmas cheer to the neighborhood. But now I was facing a potential confrontation with law enforcement over lights. I knew I needed to take control of this situation before it spiraled even further. I started by thinking about what I knew for sure. First, there were no laws against having Christmas lights. Second, I double-checked the HOA guidelines earlier, and they didn't say anything about not putting up lights or decorations as long as they didn't cause a safety hazard, which they didn't. My lights were on my property, they weren't blinking uncontrollably, and they weren't aimed at anyone's windows. They were just lights. But still, Karen was convinced I was in the wrong. And honestly, I wasn't sure whether the police would be as understanding. That's when I decided to take action. I grabbed my phone and started researching. First, I looked up the local laws about holiday decorations. I wasn't going to let this be a he said, she said situation. I needed to arm myself with fact-shard evidence that what I was doing was completely legal. I found a few local ordinances about public disturbances and light displays. Nothing, absolutely nothing, said that Christmas lights were a violation. As long as I wasn't using floodlights that could shine into other people's homes or creating a traffic hazard, I was in the clear. Next, I turned my attention to the HOA guidelines. They were a bit vague, but after reading through them again, I saw that nothing in the document specifically prohibited the kind of display I had set up. But I wasn't done yet. I needed backup. So, I reached out to a few of my neighbors who had big holiday displays too. I asked if any of them had ever gotten complaints about their lights. Sure enough, one of them had been through the same thing a few years ago and had ended up in a similar standoff with the HOA. But guess what? The police had sided with them, no violation of the law. Armed with all this information, I felt more confident. If Karen wanted a fight, she was going to get one. But this time, I wasn't just going to stand there and let her call the shots. I was going to stand up for myself and my decorations. It wasn't just about the lights anymore, it was about principle. It was about making sure I could enjoy the holidays without fear of someone trying to ruin it for me. I wasn't going to let this escalate into a full-blown war, but I knew I needed to be prepared. When the police showed up, I had to be ready to calmly present the facts, show them that I wasn't breaking any rules, and make sure that Karen couldn't pull me into a battle I didn't deserve. The clock was ticking, and the police were on their way. The sirens grew louder, and I could feel my heart racing. This was it. The moment where everything would either come crashing down or be resolved with a simple conversation. I'd gathered all my facts. I'd made sure everything was in order, and now I had to face the police. The car pulled up, and two officers stepped out. One was younger, with a calm demeanor, while the other looked a little older and more skeptical. They didn't look like they were expecting a fight, but I knew I had to be ready. I greeted them politely, trying to keep my cool. "Good evening, officers," I said. "I understand there's been a complaint about my holiday lights." The younger officer nodded, glancing around at the colorful display. He looked at me, then back at the lights, and I could tell he wasn't buying it. He was probably thinking, "This is what I get called in for?" The older officer, though, didn't look so sure. He took a few more steps toward the lights, squinting as if trying to spot something wrong. "So, what's the issue here?" the younger officer asked. I was ready. I explained everything, the fact that I had researched the local ordinances, that the HOA guidelines didn't mention anything about my type of display, and that I had been following the rules. I even told them about my conversation with the neighbors who had faced similar issues but hadn't gotten into trouble. As I spoke, I could see the younger officer nodding along. The older one? Well, he was still looking at the lights, as if expecting something to jump out and break the law. After a long pause, the younger officer turned to his partner and said, "You know, I don't see any violation here. These are just Christmas lights." The older officer didn't seem convinced at first, but then he finally shrugged. "I guess there's nothing we can do about it." I could feel the tension in the air start to ease. It was as if the storm cloud had just started to dissipate. I had won, at least for now. The younger officer turned to me and smiled a little. "I'd say your holiday display is pretty impressive." I couldn't help but smile back. "Thanks, officer. I just wanted to spread some holiday cheer." And just like that, it was over. The police had sided with me, just as I had hoped. Karen's call had been nothing more than an empty threat, but the battle wasn't over yet. I still had to deal with Karen, who was standing across the street, watching everything unfold. She wasn't happy. I could see the frustration in her face as she muttered to herself, but at that moment, I didn't care. The police had made their decision. The lights were staying, and I wasn't going to let anyone ruin my holiday spirit. Still, Karen wasn't the type to let things go, and I had a feeling this wouldn't be the last time she'd try to make things difficult for me. As the police drove away, I stood there, feeling a sense of victory. The tension that had been building up all day slowly started to melt away. I had stood my ground, calmly explained my position, and the officers had sided with me. The lights were staying up, and there was nothing Karen could do about it now. But I wasn't going to gloat. No, I wasn't the type to rub it in her face, at least, not directly. Still, I couldn't help but feel a little satisfaction knowing that the right thing had been done. The holiday cheer I had worked so hard for was protected, and the unnecessary drama had been put to rest. As I stood there looking at my homey home that had just become the center of a bizarre standoff, I realized something. This whole situation had shown me just how far people would go to ruin someone else's happiness. Karen's actions had been ridiculous, but they also reminded me that no one should let anyone or anything take away their joy, especially during the holidays. And you know what? I wasn't about to let that happen. Later that night, I received a few texts from my neighbors. Turns out, they had been watching the whole thing unfold from their windows, and they were as shocked as I was about how far Karen had gone. A few of them even came over to tell me how glad they were that I stood up for myself. Some even mentioned they were planning to decorate a bit more this year, just to show their support for holiday cheer. It felt good to know that I wasn't alone in this. As for Karen, well, she didn't come over to apologize, and she didn't have to. We both knew where things stood now. I wasn't going to take down my lights, and neither was she going to change my spirit. The next morning, I woke up to a beautiful sunrise, the lights still glowing from the night before. It wasn't just a victory for me, it was a victory for standing up to absurdity and for refusing to let negativity dictate how I spent my holidays. I guess the lesson here is simple. Sometimes you just have to take action when things go sideways, even if it's something as trivial as Christmas lights. And sometimes, the best way to handle people like Karen, you don't give them the power to ruin your joy. So, I'll leave my lights up as long as I want. And if anyone else has a problem with it, well, they'll have to take it up with the police. But for now, it's just me, my lights, and the holiday spirit, and that's all I really need. And so, the holiday season continued. No more complaints, no more drama, just pure, unadulterated Christmas cheer. You know, after everything that happened, I've had some time to reflect. Honestly, it wasn't just about the Christmas lights anymore. Sure, that was the spark that lit the fuse, but it turned into something bigger. It became a lesson in standing up for yourself, in not letting someone else's negativity or control dictate how you live your life or celebrate the holidays. At the end of the day, Karen wasn't the real problem. People like her come and go, but the bigger issue was how we, as individuals, let others impose their will on us. How we let fear or doubt make us question what's right. I could have backed down, sure. I could have taken down the lights, apologized, and avoided all the drama. But would that have been right? Would that have been fair to me, my neighbors, or the people who genuinely enjoy the holiday season? No, it wouldn't have been. So, I took action. And sure, maybe Karen didn't like it, but that wasn't really my concern anymore. What mattered was that I could look at my house every day and know that I stood up for what I believed in and that I didn't let someone else take away something as simple as the joy of Christmas lights. And now, whenever I walk past my display, I smile a little more. Not just because of the lights, but because of the journey that brought me here. A journey that taught me to never let anyone dim your light, no matter how bright it may be. Sometimes, the holidays bring us more than just gifts or food or time with family. They bring us lessons, too. About standing up for what's right, about keeping our spirits high, and about spreading a little joy even when there's someone out there trying to rain on our parade. So, as I wrap up this chapter, I want to say one thing. Don't let anyone steal your holiday spirit. Whether it's through lights, laughter, or simple traditions, don't let anyone take that away from you. After all, the holidays are about celebrating the things that truly matter, and if that means putting up a few extra lights, well, then let them shine as bright as they can. Thanks for joining me on this crazy journey. I hope your holidays are just as brightened, just as full of joy. Happy holidays, everyone!